how I structured the film comes from the stories I heard from my mother and grandmother.
It never felt like performance when they were speaking it because
I sold my earlier films and books in Facebook to raise money for this film.
So I wanted to know how you went around casting.
Structure-wise, I owe this to my mothers and grandmothers. So how I structured the film comes from the stories I heard from my mother and grandmother. And I grew up worshipping deities, small gods. So this Isaki and Mariam and so all these gods are the symbol of Dalit assertion. They are the living stories of the marginalized, the nobodies. So for them, like they're all memorialized stories. They're all memorialized, forgotten histories. And they are the ones who remind you that this is the history you belong to and not the history you read in the textbooks. And that's why I adopted that kind of a folkloric structure to Maadathy, though Maadathy is created, this is something I created in cinema. But that resembles a lot of stories I heard from the mothers of that particular community. Casting wise, actually, the ensemble of cast is the community itself. The people of Annam, Bhavana and Vikramasinghapuram, they are the part of the cast. Only few characters like Ajmina, who played Yosana, and Semmalar, who played Veni, and Kumar, who played Sudalai, and few other Karthik Raja, who played Panneer. They are the only people outside the community, but they are from Tamil theatre movement and independent cinema space, and they have done like 1 or 2 roles in mainstream film space, especially Ajmina. She's from Kerala actually, but so she's a singer, so she picked up language like she picks up sounds like music. So she has very few dialogues, but the entire dialogues was actually spoken and recorded in the mobile phone, and I gave it to her, and she had the teacher community from the community. So she was taught by the person from the community, but she recorded the whole thing in the phone, and she's been listening to it, and like she sings songs. She was like, because it's a sing sound, so there is rigorous dialogue training. So Ajmina actually, she didn't know swimming, she didn't know Tamil, she didn't know anything before being part of this film, and she devoted like months of her time living there as part of the community, learning all this and become one among them. So even the costumes and all that I stitched along with the community so that it is so harmonious to the nature, and that's how they wear clothes. So somehow, like the entire process, I had community's participation. They cooked, they fed us, and we lived with them. And though we claim as screenplay writers, dialogue writers in the film, but through the rehearsals in the mise-en-scene, we rehearsed at least 3 times the entire film. So through that, in the dialogues, in the mise-en-scene, there were constant inputs from the community, and we were constantly improvising. So they were all collaborating in the filmmaking. I think that reflects.
That really does. Yeah. I'm amazed at this. Obviously, like as an actor myself, it's great to see that there are theater artists who are part of it, but also people from the community who have come in. It never felt like performance when they were speaking it because they're so clued into their own history and what their ancestry has been. It's a revelation. I'm in awe of you because it's definitely a director's vision of making this kind of space safe for everybody to come in and be themselves and be the characters eventually. I wanted to ask you, and this is not to like go into a finale or anything, but I wanted to ask you, what are your hopes with how Maadathy should reach into people? The thing is that the viewing experience of sitting in a theater with, let's say, 50, 100 people and watching is is something else. It does something else to your brain and your hearts. When you leave the theater and you go back home, you not only take the experience of watching it just yourself and what's happened on screen, but also there is a collective like sensory experience of what happened when you were sitting as a community and watching it together. And right now it is coming into a streaming platform where you'd be watching it, then the privacy of your home and your screen. And that does something very different. I wouldn't say better or worse, but that does completely different. So how do you hope for Maadathy, with the kind of visual language that it has, which again, in between, let me interject myself and say that the way you have interwoven nature and the sounds, the sound design of Maadathy is as vocal as the language that the people are speaking in Maadathy. I feel like whenever, with especially Ajmina, whenever you're traveling with her, you really understand how she tangibly feels the nature around her, or how she is nature herself. So tell me a little bit about what your hopes are, because this is big.
I really spent a lot of time in post production hoping to theatrically release it, because from the conception of this film to the execution, I was only hoping to show it in the theater, because I really wanted people to be part of that Western Ghats, part of that winds and part of the rains and part of the river falls. I really wanted them to also be part of that nature where the story is being told, but that didn't happen. It is so sad, but at least I'm grateful to this because when malaria hit us, or when the other pandemics hit us earlier in our human history, we didn't have this kind of technology to reach out to people. See, I'm sitting here in Chennai and doing my MFA in Toronto, so I'm so grateful to internet, to the technology. So it keeps us connected. Now I'm connected to you, and how I get connected to you, I also hope Maadathy connects to the rest of the world. Yes, definitely it is going to be a small screen and it is going to be a phone screen. So, but like, do we have a choice? And also in a way, like, see, without digital technology and democratization of technology, as a first generation women graduate from a background like I'm from nowhere, I became a filmmaker because technology enabled me. And this film was also crowdfunded. I sold my earlier films and books in Facebook to raise money for this film. So this was completely funded by my Facebook friends and followers. Now I'm again going directly to my people in cyberspace and giving them, see, and this is the film you helped me realize, and now this is the film you have to adapt and nurture. So in a way it is organic, though it feels inorganic, though it feels digital and virtual and all that, because I'm someone who went with my films to all the villages, showed the films with the projector and the DVD player, and meeting people across the world, showing the film organically, talking to them. I'm kind of feeling the same thing, though it is a virtual space. I
Yeah,
don't know how to express that. It is also organic. Like,
I
you're
understand.
there, like, somebody is watching the film and they are talking to you in Facebook Messenger, in Insta Messenger, and like they are in touch with the filmmaker, with the makers, even with the actors. So the
Yeah,
entire team is there in the cyberspace, and the audience can directly talk to them. And
absolutely.
this whole accessibility is amazing.
Yeah.
And this is also breaking walls, though it is not physical and it is virtual. It is breaking lot of walls, and you don't have a market economy, you don't have this theater monopoly, you don't have all these agencies of capitalism distancing you from your audience. There is
Yeah,
this space which, like,
exactly.
we are all throwing ourselves in that and connecting, and that is amazing. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a great way to look at it. And actually, it's the only way to look at it, to be honest, because it's the most positive thing that I've heard, especially coming from independent directors who are struggling to fund their dreams and their visions. And these, like you said, are stories. Like, I have grown up in a extremely privileged space, and it took me a long time to actually acknowledge whatever little struggle that I felt I was facing, but then also to see how complicit I am in not making the effort to learn about everybody else's story, and how my story has suppressed someone else's. So it's more about, for me, Maadathy instilled in me this desire. In fact, not just instilled, in fact, it kind of fortified the need to be more of a listener than the speaker. And I hope that's what the audience would also feel without having to, because sometimes certain stories can, like I said, like Maadathy is something that when you watch it you cannot really take, because again, it's visually magnetic for you to not move away. The characters are well etched out and arced. You don't, I mean, I've never seen that landscape. I have never been there. I've never known of these stories. But once the storytelling begins, I didn't feel like I was in an alien space. I felt like somewhere my roots are sprawling out, and I can find my way back to where I could have actually been belonging to the story at some point in the world. I don't know. When you think of time as a parallel universe and all that. I wish for Maadathy that it stirs the same sentiment in most people who find it very difficult to be the listener without having to defend themselves. Because there is nothing but a very solid, very committed, very cemented meditation on what happens to these people, what has been done to them, and how nature has been watching, observing, being a witness to this. And all that is extremely overwhelming, and at the same time, somewhere it's liberating to accept your participation in all this, so that there is a way forward that's better in just embracing what's beyond, like you said, textbooks. So, Stream, I'm glad that you've partnered with Stream to bring the movie out. Recently, some extremely great films are coming through the platform. So, like, it's even more befitting right now that Maadathy comes into that space. And like you said, your Facebook friends and followers are like the best audience. If anybody who puts in their money before the film comes out and trusts in a director, that's a great testimony on to who you are, Leena. And I cannot wait for more of your works. I want to actually take the opportunity to say that I'm very excited after this call to dive into your book, your collection of poetry. And that is something that I hope that people will also introduce themselves to you, like make themselves known to all your work, so that I think as an artist, what I would always want for audience to know is that it's not only about paying the money and going and seeing the film or the product, but also diving deeper into who the artist was in their time and age. How do they put their signature to the time? And in doing so, the audience kind of blur the line between the art and the artist. They themselves become a part of it. So this is my wish for you, and all the best. And I'm
Thank
very
you.
happy for Maadathy, and I hope at some point I get to meet your lovely team. Maybe we could travel. Maybe I get to see the place that you grew up in, the landscape that is never leaving my head and my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so much, Leena.
thank you. Thank you so much. Love you.
Love you too.